Hi, if you are taking the Azure exam for the first time, it's essential to watch this video. This video has two parts. We'll start with the first part, focusing on practice questions that are crucial for AZ900 Microsoft Azure Fundamentals. Then, in the second part, we'll experience the real exam environment to get feel for what the exam will be like. Let's get started with Module 1.
Before we dive in, I've got a little surprise for you. There's a bonus section at the end of this video. It includes extra practice questions that you can work on your own time. Feel free to pause the video and take notes as needed.
Our first module is Describe Cloud Concepts, which is about 25 to 30% of the total exam. What are two characteristics of the public cloud deployment model? Servers and storage are owned and operated by a third-party cloud service provider. Services are offered over the internet and are available to anyone who wants to purchase them. Now move on to the next question, which is,
which two characteristics are common advantages of cloud computing? Geo-distribution and high availability.
What is an advantage of cloud computing compared to on-premises deployments? You can scale more quickly. Note, you can work from multiple workstations even in on-premises. So the only sole advantage of cloud computing is scaling more quickly. Select the answer correctly. So the answer refers to upfront cost incurred one time, such as hardware purchases. It's capital expenditure. If it was running cost, then it would be operational expenditure or OPEX. In which two deployment models are customers responsible for managing operating systems that host applications? For this one, let me remind you of a picture from our previous video. You can see that in case of SaaS and PaaS, the operating systems are Microsoft's or cloud's responsibility, but for IaaS and on-prem is the customer's responsibility, which is highlighted in dark blue, and the SaaS and PaaS was light blue, the Microsoft one. So now coming back to our question, so it's asking operating system's responsibility for the customer, so that is IaaS and on-prem. Which type of cloud service model is typically licensed through a monthly or annual subscription? In SaaS, we would have periodic subscription, annual or monthly. Your organization is building a custom application. You need to focus on application development rather than configuration and management of servers. Which cloud service model should you use? So note, we are focusing on app development, that's platform as a service, PaaS. Which cloud service model is used by Azure SQL database? Again, SQL database, PaaS, platform as a service. What uses the infrastructure as a service, IaaS cloud model? And the answer is Azure Virtual Machine. What are two basic services provided by all cloud providers? Compute and storage. Now let's move on to the next module, which is Describe Azure Architecture and Services, which is about 35 to 40% of the total exam. What are cloud-based backup services, data replication, and geo-distribution features of? So we back up the data, we replicate the data to prevent data loss from a disaster, and the answer is a disaster recovery plan. What is high availability in a public cloud environment depend on? And the answer is the service level agreement, SLA, that you would choose. It could be 99 or any percentage that you would choose. The next question is increasing the capacity of an application by adding additional virtual machine is called. Note, we are adding virtual machine, which is horizontal scaling. So if we would be increasing the capacity of a machine, say for example increasing RAM or CPU, then it would be vertical scaling. For which resource does Azure generate separate billing reports and invoices by default? And the answer is subscriptions. Which Azure component allows you to replicate resources across a geography to ensure business continuity during a natural disaster at the primary site? The answer is region pairs. The answer is the deployment and management services for Azure, and the answer is Azure Resource Manager ARM. Which Azure Compute Service can you use to deploy and manage a set of identical virtual machines? The answer is Azure Virtual Machine Scale Sets. What can you use to execute code in a serverless environment? And the answer is Azure Functions. Which storage service should you use to store thousands of files containing text and images? Azure Blob Storage, where you can store text, images, files, anything. Which Azure Blob Storage tier stores data offline and offers the lowest storage cost at the highest cost to access the data? Lowest storage cost and higher access cost is the archive. Which Azure storage service should you use to store unstructured files such as images that will be served on web pages? And the answer is Azure Blob Storage. What can you use to ensure that a user can only access applications from compliant devices? That's conditional access, and this conditional access is also important. Which type of strategy uses a series of mechanisms to slow the advancement of an attack that aims to gain unauthorized access to data? And the answer is defense in depth. And this defense in depth has 7 layers, from physical layer to data, and there's a sequence which you can remember. Here's the diagram for your reference from our previous video. Which Microsoft Intra feature can you use to ensure that users can only access Microsoft 365 applications from approved client applications? Again, the answer is conditional access. What can you use to sync identities from an on-premises Active Directory domain service, ADDS domain, to Microsoft Intra? The answer is Microsoft Intra Connect. If you're liking this video, then please like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's move on to the third and last module. Describe Azure Management and Governance, which is about 30 to 35% of the exam question. Which are 2 common scenarios for using resource stacks? Characterizing cost by department and associating costs with different environments. Which 2 features are available by using Azure Cost Management plus Billing? Create and manage budgets and generate historical reports and forecast future uses. Your organization plans to deploy several production virtual machines that have consistent resource uses throughout the year. What can you use to minimize the costs of the virtual machines without reducing the functionality of the virtual machine? And the answer is Azure reservations. Usually in organization, people would reserve, for example, a dev environment, and having it already resolved will cost less. What can be applied to a resource to prevent accidental deletion or resource lock? What can you use to ensure that new and existing Azure resources stay in compliance with corporate standards? And the answer is Azure policy. Azure policy is also important, and it enables you to create, assign, and manage policy that control or audit resources. What can you use to ensure that a deployment team can only create virtual machines of a certain size? Again, it's Azure policy. What can you use to create resources in Azure and include a validation step to ensure all resources are created in a specific order based on dependencies in parallel and independent? And the answer is Azure Resource Manager ARM templates. Which two tools can you use to create a new virtual machine from a mobile device that runs Android? So you create from mobile device, that's PowerShell in Azure Cloud Shell and the Azure portal. What can you use to manage services across third-party cloud platforms and on-premises environments? And the answer is Azure Arc. What provides recommendations to reduce the cost of Azure resources? And the answer is Azure Advisor. You need to review the root cause analysis (RCA) report for a service outage that occurred last week. And the answer is Service Health, Azure Service Health. Note it's for the root cause analysis for the service outage. You need to be notified when there are new recommendations for reducing Azure costs. Which tools should you use? Azure Advisor. An Azure Advisor evaluates Azure resources and makes recommendations to help improve reliability, security, and performance, achieve operational excellence, and reduce costs. What can you use to find information about planned maintenance for Azure services that are critical to your organization? Again, note it's about service health and it's planned maintenance for Azure services. And the answer is Azure Service Health. What can you apply to an Azure virtual machine to ensure that users cannot change or delete resources? A lock. Which two factors affect Azure costs? Resource usage and availability zone selection. What are two common scenarios for using resource stacks? Associating cost with different environment and categorizing cost by department.
What is an Azure storage account named Storage 001 an example of resource?
Now let's move on to the second part of this video where we will see how the real exam would look like. I'll provide this link in the description below. You can agree it, say yes, and move on to the next, and go to the next, which is sandbox of the exam. When you sit in the exam, this is what it will look like, and you follow the same step. After this, you'll be a little confident on your exam, and just press next, keep pressing the next, and on the top you will see the timer, and when you get the question, this is how question will appear. You have different options like calculator, take a break, research your answer, and sometimes you are not confident with your question. You can always review your answer later, which you can tick review later, or you can also put the feedback. And here's the next question. Sometimes you would be asked to do the order instead of multiple choice question, and this is how it would look like. I'm just randomly selecting answers, so don't care on what I'm answering. I'm just showing you how the exam feels like and what type of things you would get, because all these things you might not see in the practice test. And the next type of question is following the sequence, where you would just select and then go to your sequence like 1, 2, 3. For example, the picture that we saw from defense in depth, the 7 levels, physical to data, so their sequence, or sometimes a process, what you do first, second, like that. And here's another type of question where you'll be just seeing a pictures, and based on that you just give the answer. You might have this type of Dropbox questions and the like. Once you finish your test, you will land in this page where you will see different cards, answered, unanswered, for review, for comment. So you can straight go to unanswered, for example, at the first and answer it, and also go to review. And sometimes if you put something for the feedback, you can go and write there. And note, so you see these are as the titles. If you wanted to see all the questions, just on the top where you see view as tiles option, you can just go and it'll change the modes. So for now we go and do the unanswered question, which you can just click and then you'll reach to the page you would want. You can reset your answer if you wanted to retake, like for it will be handy when you are doing the sequence and you don't need to go back, just reset it and then do it again. And at the end, when you finish your all answers, it will take you to the feedback page. Again, for the feedback, you don't need to scroll to the end. You can just go to the home page, and since I randomly clicked, it will say, well, I didn't pass, but once you do your exam, you'll say your score then and there right after finishing the exam.
And this is the bonus time. Enjoy learning, and here you go.
Stay tuned and thank you for watching.